Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Zuber. I'm the managing partner of Zuber Lawler. Delighted to be here at New West Summit. Zuber Lawler, for those of you who don't know, is a law firm based in Los Angeles, Silicon Valley, Chicago, New York. We represent a long list of Fortune companies, but we've also been in the cannabis space for over 12 years, which is unusual. So we have a perspective on the cannabis industry, the growth of it, the development of it, that's pretty unique. I'm very excited to be here with my dear friend, a true pioneer in the cannabis industry. I think, in my view, one of maybe a handful of persons that can actually, under God, take credit for having built the Canadian, and in that sense, the global cannabis industry. The founder of PharmaCan, aka Kronos Group, and really just a wonderful human being, as well as, I think, a visionary. So, Paul, welcome. It's great to be here with you.
Wow, thanks, Tom. Hello, everyone. A lot of great familiar faces in the audience. Sorry if I'm talking too close. It's great to be here, Tom. For those of you that don't know Tom Zuber, he's another pillar of our emerging cannabis community. And in addition to being one of the smartest people I've ever met in the industry, also one of the most integrity-based. And for us, it's all about integrity from here on in for the cannabis industry. So I'm delighted to be here.
Great. And Paul, first, for the audience's sake, tell us a bit about you as a person, how you grew up, your background. Tell us who Paul Rosen is.
Sure. I'll try to make this quick and as non-self-aggrandizing and pretentious as possible. I warn you, I sometimes err on the side. But I always start by saying I'm a cannabis user and have been for almost my entire adult life. And not only am I in the cannabis industry, but the cannabis is inside me and always has been. I just misunderstood what its role was in my life earlier. Thought it was a drug because that's what everyone said it wasn't. It was a wellness product that helped me in many ways. I'll unpack it. But as an adult, I began my career as a constitutional lawyer in Canada. And a criminal defense attorney. These things are interconnected. Most constitutional work of gravity takes place in a criminal defense context. And a lot of these issues are explored through drug prosecution. I was, and to date remain, the youngest Canadian ever to successfully petition a case to our Supreme Court in Canada, and it did involve a search and seizure involving a drug interdiction, not cannabis. But so I understood the issues, and in Canada, we had judicial reform, a constitutional recognition of the right to consume medical cannabis in the early 1990s. So our federal government was compelled by our court to enforce the Constitution to provide a grow-your-own sort of program, which is what happened. But I wasn't in the cannabis industry. I went from being a lawyer to an entrepreneur, and I've been fortunate to build and operate a few very successful companies in non-cannabis industries. I won't bore you with the details, and I'm super passionate about the roles that entrepreneurs play in our society. I think we're some of the most important stakeholders, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But along came the cannabis industry sort of in 2012, and it completely disrupted my adult life and my career, and it's pretty much had my full attention ever since.
So what caused you in 2012 to get into cannabis?
Entrepreneurs, we are always trying to look around the corner to see what might be coming next. And even as a successful entrepreneur, the companies that I operated, I was always somewhat restless after around year 4 or 5 to start something new. And something I read in the Canadian newspaper in 2012 got my attention. Our previous government, the Conservative government, no friend to cannabis, articulated that they were going to overhaul this Grow Your Own program that we had in Canada and replace it with a commercial cultivation licensing program. And just the collection of those words together, commercial cultivation cannabis license, just completely perked up my entrepreneurial antenna. I really kind of bit the hook. And like all entrepreneurs that sense something incredible, but really, quite frankly, don't know shit about it, I just started a company like immediately, like almost immediately, because that's what I tell entrepreneurs. The power of starting is incredibly powerful. And once you start something, momentum builds quickly. And there's 100 reasons why you shouldn't start. But you should anyways, because once you start, it goes live. And that company became what is now called the Kronos Group. We began scouring the Canadian landscape, looking for companies that might get a license. In fact, when we started, the Canadian government hadn't even published their regulations. So we were investing in companies that were going to apply for a license, of which the rules to get said license weren't yet promulgated. So risky, right? Talk about aiming at a target you can't see. But through process and some good fortune, under God, to use your phrase, we succeeded, and we identified and raised capital and identified some of the early licenses in Canada, and then it just got built on and built upon. I took it public as PharmaCan Capital, and I was besought by the cannabis industry. The same reason that we're all here today. It's irresistible. Its gravitational pull cannot be resisted. I have been pulled into its orbit, and like my family will tell you, yes, there's the pre-2012 father, husband, and then the whole new version that came after the cannabis industry came. And I certainly no one would ever accuse me of being lazy or redolent. I was always going for it, but this industry is incredible. It's breathtaking. So I saw this as a generational opportunity, originally to be an entrepreneur, but now and much more ambitiously to make the world a better place.
Amen, brother. I want to talk about edibles. Pantry, I know, is something you're passionate about. Edibles is an exciting topic in Canada, obviously, just coming up online up there. We've had a bit more history here in the States. What excites you before we get to Pantry? What excites you in the edibles world right now?
I mean, I'll just say Pantry is a food company I started. It doesn't have much recognition yet. It's pretty new. We launched in California about 6 months ago and are rolling out to dispensaries. And for me, it's a passion play. It recognizes a product category that I can't find in the market. I'm looking for healthy edibles because I think that's a great way to consume cannabis. I can't find it. But edibles as a category, like I think there's I don't know, whoever read that famous Maureen Dowd story in the New York Times circa, I think, 2013 or 2014. I mentioned it on Joanna's podcast recently, and those of you that didn't read it, the great New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd had a sort of a existential quasi-near-death experience in Colorado when she ate a much larger dose of a edible than anyone should, or certainly a person of her, novelty in this product should. And she wrote about it, how terrifying it was. And so I've heard people have had that sort of Maureen Dowd experience. And I will tell you, I myself had a near terrifying experience when the first time I ever took an edible was in 2014. I had spoken at a conference. And after I spoke, someone offered me a chocolate chip cookie that was infused. And it wasn't labeled, there was no indication of dosage, and I was like, okay, I read this Maureen Dowd piece, like what's going to happen to me, and they assured me if I just took half, it would be fine, and I should wait an hour. So that's exactly what I did. The whole afternoon I was going to be listening to pretty academic stuff. It was a Pharmacy Academy conference. It was not I was like, what am I going to do for the next 4 hours? I failed like all my science in high school, and so the cookie, I took it, and it was like 1:30 in the afternoon, and like an idiot around 2:30, I didn't feel much, so I finished the cookie. No, it gets much better and worse, I can assure you. Then within minutes, before it's really activated, I get a call from my press agent. Now, I'm not running a public company at the moment, but at the time I was, and our main business show in Canada called BNN, owned by Business News Network, owned by Bloomberg, BNN/Bloomberg, asked for me to be on their seminal show at end of market called Market Watch. It's a 4 p.m. live hit. And I've never said no to a microphone in my life. And I hadn't yet, turned on or activated. And I didn't even think. I snap called yes. And in between, a funny thing happened on the way to the circus. I really got Maureen Dowded, I guess. I couldn't believe, and I'm a career cannabis consumer, so it wasn't like I wasn't used to it, but it was a whole different level of bioavailability. I'll go with that. So I go to my office, true story, and my press agent wants to do like a dress rehearsal. They pretty much want to call it off because I am like fumbling. Like I can't do anything. I can't answer the most simple question. I can barely get my name out. And I'm like, I'm going to be okay. And then all of a sudden, we're in the car. We're at the studio. It's a big TV studio. I'm in the green room. They mic me up. They take me to makeup. Makeup says I'm sweatier than usual because I've been there before. And they walk me out. They say, you've been here before. It's 5 minutes and go, and we're live. I fucking killed it. Like straight up, I killed it. I snapped straight. I was terrified. And when it was over, I looked up like nervously to say, how was that? And they said, that was really good. And I said, then why did we only do like 2 minutes? And they said, we did 8. We went over. You were really just talking a lot. So, no, that's a funny story, but it really did happen, and it reflects an issue at the time, which is that we did not know how to dose this product. But I'll take that to Pantry. Years later, I'm an educated consumer. I would never make that mistake again. I didn't intend to do that. I wouldn't recommend it. Don't try that. Don't do that. I lived to tell, but it scared the bejeebs out of me. But I kept looking for a product. Like, I'm trying to get away from smoking. I don't smoke tobacco, and I find that whether cannabis is a carcinogen, which I don't believe it is. I believe it's anti-cancer. But even if it does not cause lung cancer, it's not good for your lungs. I don't think any physician, that specializes in your bronchial system, your heart, your lungs, is going to say that's good per se for your respiratory system. I know, as someone that is pretty into sport and athletics, it's not. I just know it's not. So I'm looking for my wellness product to be delivered in the most wellness package. And if cannabis is a wellness product, which I most certainly believe, and we all believe it is, then let's deliver cannabis well, if you will. And so in the edibles market, it means let's not wrap THC in low shelf candy and put in ingredients that we wouldn't usually eat but for the input of THC. Let's put in the healthy ingredients that those of us that are conscious consumers look for in our food now. We want to choose ingredients that are good for us, not the high margin, highly addictive, shitty ingredients that big food has been selling us for most of our lives. And we're not there yet as an industry. Cannabis as an industry, I would say, we are still working on fully respecting our customer and fully working on respecting our customers' agency over the fact that they don't really own the outcome and that they don't understand what they don't know. And if we tell them the only thing you should measure is THC, and that's it, because it's good business, because it's high margin business, and you don't have to worry about the other ingredients, kind of like a magic trick, look at this hand, but don't look at this hand. That'll work in a supply constrained market. But when we empower our consumers to be fully empowered like they are across all other CPG verticals, never mind the whole medicine side, they're going to demand more from us. So we're going to get there before they get there. We're going to wait for them to tell us what we're doing wrong. And I'm not picking on companies per se, but really, the edibles market's a shit show, in my humble opinion. Mostly is just trans fat and high fructose corn syrup and processed sugar. Where's the spirulina? Where's the goji? Where's the chlorophyll? Where's the keto? Where's products I would want to eat? And where's flavor? Where's chefs? People that actually design food for a living, making the food. So I just look at the food category. Here's my thesis at Pantry. 1, as a way to consume cannabis, edibles is going to grow quickly in market share. The vape crisis is just one example of why people will have a second thought about what you can't see, you don't know. We'll say that. What you can't see, you don't know. That's what the vape has taught us. Even I would say flour, at least you know what you get, right? You got the flour, you got the paper. So I would say what we want to do in the edible category is highlight the non-THC items, everything else, and basically say we'll make the THC almost free because it's not that expensive. That's the truth as a manufacturer. THC is really cheap, sorry. If they want to tell you that to go from 50 milligram chocolate bar to 100 milligram chocolate bar should result in a price movement of 60% at retail, I'm telling you that's total bullshit. We're talking about incremental cost of goods sold increase that is measured in basis points, not percentage points. So this is all the stuff we're going to do better on as an industry. We got to do better on this kind of stuff.
So on the note of that cookie story, knowing you as well as I do, Paul, let me just come out and say it. Are you a pothead? Do you consider yourself a pothead, so to speak?
I always just despise that reductive term. But yes, I suppose according to some definitions, certainly if you measure my cannabis consumption, what would be like what would be the PhD of that? What would be like just stayed in school the whole time. But no, because I talk about this idea, these phrases. There was, if anyone saw Alicia yesterday, there was a very brave woman who asked the first question who had cerebral palsy, but the question was simply, when will movies stop portraying cannabis in these stupid stereotypes? And I chime in on that question to say, when will the media stop covering important cannabis stories like the Farm Bill or the SAFE Act or advances in medical technology with pictures of people wearing 420 sunglasses exhaling a cloud of cumulus cannabis smoke? That is not what the cannabis industry looks like, and we need to update our file. So when people say, are you a pothead, the way I think about that would be the way if you had asked somebody prior to a whole political correctness time in the 1980s, let's play word association just give me the image, don't filter homosexual. In the 1980s, the image is going to be the activist, because the activist is the only member of that community that is going to identify with that community, because every other member of the community is going to suffer legal, economic, and social consequences. So today, ask yourself that same question, and there's, at least in my mind, there's no image. It's anybody, because there's no fear of putting your hand up. And that's exactly what this pothead and stoner stereotype represents. It represents that for years and years, people like myself, but certainly not just myself, in positions of, if you will, quasi-respectability. I was a member of the Law Society of Upper Canada. I swore an oath which I maintained to uphold the law. By consuming cannabis, I was breaking the very oath my professional license depended on. Thus, if I said to the world, do you want to hear something cool? The night before I appeared at the Supreme Court of Canada, I kind of smoked a joint on the steps of said Supreme Court. Like a Frank Capra film meets a Cheech and Chong movie kind of thing. It was perfect. But I did it because that was a process that allowed me to be ready for the next day. I knew that I was sort of peak analytically ready and verbal if I did that the night before. I did it on the steps of the Supreme Court of Canada because I thought it was kind of cool and badass to do. So when I look at myself and I put my hand up to say I am a cannabis user today, and I see a lot of other people, like, who here is a cannabis user? Don't be afraid to put your hand up. Who here relies upon cannabis as a product that improves their life and the performance of their life? Don't be afraid to put your hand up. I was afraid to put my hand up, but I look at my life on paper, and it would, I think, destroy any of these stupid stereotypes. You know me pretty good. I don't spend too much time eating cereal in a bowl at home watching cartoons during the day. I'm pretty go, go, go. I'm very serious about fitness, health, community, all these things, and I find that cannabis gives me occasionally and frequently an additional edge. I don't drink anymore because it's a failing product. I don't smoke cigarettes because it's a failing product. I don't do cocaine, it's a failing product. All these are failing products. The only products that interest me are products that are good for me, and cannabis is good for me, so let's deliver it like it is meant to be good for us. By the way, interrupt anytime. I like live questions rather than this whole thing, because I'll just talk the whole time. All right.
Go ahead.
No, but thanks for sharing, because we shouldn't be afraid to talk about who we are. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, because in fairness, I'm self-prescribing myself. I'm not going through the medical community per se. Like, you're really into I wouldn't want to compare, because it would do a disservice to your therapy, your clinician. But I will say that unwittingly, I have been self-medicated in the dark on a trial and error basis most of my adult life. And yes, though, I did suffer from anxiety. My story was that I was having a lot of trouble when I was a teenager. I was failing school. I had terrible anxiety. I honestly had suffered some pretty severe childhood trauma that was a hard issue for me to deal with when I was going in adolescence. And when I started consuming cannabis, although I couldn't figure out why, my life started to improve. I became a good student. I went to university. I went to the best law school in Canada. I went to Supreme Court. All these things started happening. So there was no vocabulary for it. I probably was ADD. It helped with that. I definitely was hardcore OCD. I had a lot of tics and all this stuff. It helped with that. My parents, it was like the 1970s. They didn't know what to deal with it. You know, they didn't know. They just hoped I would pass through this, and I had to hide my habit. So in that sense, yes, very much, ma'am. For me, sometimes it can relax me. Sometimes it can rev me up. It almost can amplify what it is I'm looking for. If I need it to be, what I do find, though, is it doesn't impair me, and this is a really important thing. It never impairs my cognitive abilities, ever. Often it heightens them. I would never get on stage or theoretically go on a business news network after having consumed alcohol. That would just be, I would make a fool of myself, even a modest amount. It's so self-evident when that happens, but I find that cannabis because we've been lied to. And maybe it's a replacement for yours. I mean, I'm arguing that it is threatening to the pharmaceutical industry because it could disrupt. And while I'm in no position to say you should switch because that is a doctor's decision, the great thing about cannabis is it doesn't contraindicate in a negative fashion. You can do it. You don't have to worry about if I take it with something else, will I hurt myself? I believe it's known that the only way to die from a pound of cannabis is if it falls upon you from a great height and like renders you inert. The toxicity dose is something like 18,000% the regular dose compared to like an aspirin, which is like 22 times. So it is a bit of a trial and error thing, and it is for me as well. I still haven't perfected, if you will. That's something we're going to talk about the medicalization. Getting the Q&A already here. Okay. Yes, one more, and then we got to go back to our script. Yeah, we did it again. So Hall of Flowers, this amazing event in Santa Rosa, California, that is really for the buyers. Like, this is the one event that a retail buyer, a dispensary buyer can go to and see all their best-in-class and new emerging vendors, place their orders, knowing they're going to be shipped, just like a regular industry. Imagine that. They have shows for buyers. And it has a great deal of culture. So Pantry does this activation. Again, we're a food company, so we serve food at a trade show, meaning we actually open a restaurant and serve non-infused food today, real food. We're partnered with the Franks, these sort of iconic chefs in Brooklyn, New York, that have a well-known restaurant, and we just try to make the thesis that Pantry is food. So we did that again, and it was a great success. We're doing family dinners around Los Angeles. We're going to do one in San Francisco shortly, hopefully with Mike Harden, if he's anywhere around here. Where's Mike? Maybe not here, but hopefully with Mike Harden up at Sonoma Farms with Joyce. And we're just kind of engage with our community as much as possible and seek feedback. And, we're looking, like all emerging brands and businesses, we're only good if you tell us we're good, so we need you to tell us if we're good or not. We're going to get it. I think Tom has a couple of, we're going to get there, all right.
Just so we will pause for questions at the end. Let's back up a bit and talk about the cannabis industry as a whole. The potential of this plant to improve the world. I know many people in the room, we all have high hopes for that. There are some challenges that we're facing along the way. One of those challenges is the fact that, we're in a bubble, and in many ways, there's a
bubble has been pricked a little bit.
There are some parallels between what's going on today in the cannabis industry and what went on in the internet in the late 90s, right? And so that was a bubble then, but underneath that bubble, the internet was real, and of course the great companies, the companies with solid footing, made it through, and they became the Amazons, the Googles, the Facebooks of today. What's your view on the cannabis industry today? How are we doing?
That's a great question. So there's two ways to sort of attack that. One is we'll just talk about, like, is it a bubble? I mean, the public markets have been very volatile. That's the nature of a new industry. Get used to it. If you don't like volatility, don't be in this industry. But I will say that there's a tale of two cities. You've got what's going on in Toronto, i.e. Bay Street, i.e. the capital markets, which, it looks terrifying right now, where the markets are down, say they're being cut in half, really basically across all asset sectors, all geography in the last 6 months. But I spent a lot of time in California, have a home here, and business is great on the ground. So the real economy, it's like it's the best of times, it's the worst of times in one sense. The micro, the macro being the public, the perception, these valuations, all this up and down. But there's no doubt, at the ground level, there's something enormous happening. And the public markets will get better at learning how to efficiently price assets, there's no doubt. But as an industry, I feel like we're getting a passing grade, and just barely today. And I'm a little bit, I'm not saying I'm jaded, but I'm getting a little concerned about that we're losing our value set in this industry, sincerely. And it's easy for people to say, Paul, you started a company that's worth a few $1 billion, so like shut the fuck up. And you're wearing alligator shoes, so really shut up. But I'm serious. The thing is that I will admit that when I came into this industry, I was motivated like entrepreneurs are by a return on my capital. That's what entrepreneurs, we will take enormous personal risk. And when we fail, we will fail alone. And when we succeed, it's to everyone's benefit. So I proudly say I've succeeded as an entrepreneur. We're different than bankers. Entrepreneurs, we privatize risk and we socialize the outcome. And bankers privatize outcome and socialize risk. And it's a very, very, very important distinction. So I celebrate all of us entrepreneurs, and when we succeed, we should applaud. But that is not the sum total even close as to what is the cannabis industry. So I feel like we're failing because it's starting, and I got to be honest, I was influenced by this gentleman, Malik. If he's here, I don't know if he's here, he spoke yesterday and again today, and he really called it out, which is that the cannabis industry is basically just repeating all of the historical mistakes of other industries that have come before, and the highest goals, the highest aspirations are now seriously in jeopardy. So I do fundamentally believe we are now in like an existential battle for the soul of this industry, and the cement is firming. And so let me say, what do I mean by that? I mean, this industry is supposed to promote sustainability. It's supposed to promote local agriculture. It's supposed to promote small local business. It's supposed to empower patients and local communities to take healthcare into their own hands. And it's supposed to revolutionize the CPG industry to replace average products with better products. Right? These are all the things, and it's supposed to represent the customer base that we're selling to, something that we keep hearing about, this diversity thing that everyone talks about but is not being practiced. So the whole way that, if you listen to Mary Bailey at Last Prisoners or Malik at his company, whose name just temporarily eluded me, they're making seminal points that need to be addressed, and I'm mentioning it now because they're seminal. We can be here celebrating our good fortune while people are in jail. We can be celebrating our good fortune while disadvantaged remain disadvantaged. And I acknowledge I'm a white male. I get it, okay? I get it. But that doesn't say anything. That's just my genetic fact, right? But as an industry, I've never seen an industry with so many amazing people. I've worked in other industries for years where I don't have really any friends. I just have colleagues. And all across this industry, at all the events I go to, which are like multiple events a month, it's genuine affection, admiration, respect. There's an amazing amount of people that have amazing values that have to succeed. Like, this can't just be another big business play. It just cannot become that. It can be big business. That's cool. I'm totally cool with the idea that one could build a big business on a level playing field in a meritocracy. But when we hear about the corruption in the awarding of licenses, when we see how even companies that we respect are dipping into the counterfeit market because there's a profitability principle, and when we deny research to really advance the medicalization and the understanding about how healing and revolutionary and transformative this plant really is, as long as we're doing all that, we're not honoring the plant. And if we're not honoring the plant, we're not doing a service to the industry, and sort of those same corrupt forces that have brought you all these other historical things are right back at work. So the people in this room need to activate themselves, including myself, to do more and to do better, because it will slip away. Like, it will. If it's going to take, it's a tug of war, we have to tug back. Those of us that want to do, and what does that mean? It means think about that in every decision you make from here on in. Think about that in every single decision you make from here on in, and price it in and expect it and get there. The same way I said, get there before the market demands you to get there. Get there now. That's what we have to do.
Reed, I'll add a note to that, which is it's one of the big challenges of the cannabis industry is counterfeit product. And from a bigger picture perspective, I think the next big step for the cannabis industry involves creating a conversation of trust between the cannabis plant and those folks out there that haven't yet tried cannabis. And that conversation of trust is inhibited by counterfeit product that kills people. One of the things about this plant that is so amazing, unique, is that you can pass around the joint between a banker and a lawyer and a cook and somebody who barely speaks English and somebody else who's fluent in French and not in, and so you, and all of a sudden all your differences disappear, and you're just smoking a joint and you're having a conversation and celebrating what's in common amongst amongst people, and so many forces in the world today try and convince us that we're so different, and they try to find profits in those differences. But I think the plant actually does the opposite. You try and find profit in something that brings us together. So on that note, on that theme, it seems to me that it's in all of our interests as individuals to take a look at the common good and the common interest we have in this industry and continuing to progress. That involves each of us owning a piece of that effort to create a conversation of trust between the plant and those users of cannabis that haven't yet tried it. And that means every single person in here should be working to eliminate counterfeit product from the market, even if it's not your product that's killing a child, or it's not your child or someone that you know that's killed. It should matter to all of us. And until it matters to all of us, I think we've got a big obstacle in front of us in terms of allowing this plant to reach its potential to change the world.
Cool.
So,
agreed.
So let's talk about in general, the technology of the plant. On that note, the power of this plant to change the world. There is, right now, we're looking at the tip of the iceberg, right? And there's so much technology in this plant. This is a technology industry, like the pharmaceutical industry is a technology industry. And I think most people don't really look at this industry as a technology industry, but I know that you do. So talk a bit about that. What's in that plant in terms of technology, and where do you think it'll go?
I'm definitely not that person, I'm afraid, the agronomist. But I mean, I think, I'll tell you how I think trends are going to shape the understanding of the plant. And I think, I guess, for consumers, for stakeholders, for attorneys, for aspirant entrepreneurs, I feel like there are some trends to start paying attention to that are going to affect all of our outcomes as our industry continues to mature. And one trend I want to sort of discuss with you, Tom, because I think we're quite in harmony on this, is that right now I look at the medical market and the recreational market as essentially conflated and sort of sitting on the same territory, and I think we're on the verge of breaking out where the medical market is really going to go proper medical. We'll look at the FDA approval of GW Pharmaceuticals product Epidiolex as the go-to remedy now for Dravet syndrome, as just the canary in the coal mine. And you and I are involved in an enterprise called Jenny's Rose, where we are also working towards FDA certification on some novel therapies and also seeking some intellectual property recognition for those therapies. So I see number one trend in cannabis is that the rec market and the medical market are going to split. You're not going to get your medicine from a bud tender. We all love the bud tender, but those days are going to go soon. And rec's going to, of course, just be standard full CPG playbook, which is a ground game of brand and distribution and pound and ground. Pound distribution. There's no shortcuts. Pretty boxes just won't get it done. You really got to, like at Pantry, you have to build our own sales force to like go proselytize, champion what we're doing. And medical is going to go proper medical. And I'm going to also argue that the rise of IP and blockchain and various other technologies are going to play a fairly important. If the counterfeit crisis is a crisis, it's a crisis of authentication. Most certainly it is. And the blockchain, I'm not saying that like a non-erasable disintermediate ledger is going to solve all our problems, but actually it's going to have a profound impact on improving the traceability, which is a counterfeit problem. Of course, there's all the technology around understanding the plant. Everyone's crazy for like CBD. I used to joke, I'm waiting for the business plan for the person that wants to infuse CBD with CBD. It's CBD infused CBD. It's like it's this close. I've seen CBD pizza, so I know it's close. But CBD, you know, there's no doubt it's likely a very unique nutraceutical product, a supplement that seems to have gone viral quickly, but I will say likely it has been sort of, we're overextending its efficacy beyond maybe what it really can do, and the marketers are having a field day. But as we dive into this plant, and this is something we're both very passionate about through the research that we kind of undertake and underwrite at our company, we're just getting going here, and there's various other compounds and cannabinoids that are going to play an innovative role in the development of novel medicines. They're going to change our world, and they're going to undermine the traditional pharmaceutical industry, but are also going to make a meaningful impact on the CPG industry. The real trend, though, is that if you're a cannabis entrepreneur or a cannabis business, you need cash. This is a ripping expensive industry, and the old trend is the new trend. Cash is the new cash, as I always say. It just never goes out of style, it never goes out of fashion. And when I analyze companies companies as an investor, these days I used to look at all the stories. I just cut to the balance sheet now. How much money do you have? What does it cost a month to operate the business? And do you have any brand strategy that's going to get my attention? Yes, sir. You have a question. Oh, well, that's I have strong opinions of that. Well, okay, so, basically, I look at that as a seminal moment in our industry for the following reason. Until now, I will say that we've had no meaningful objective analysis of the valuation of any cannabis company. If you live in Canada or if you pay attention to the Canadian investment banks, they publish investment-grade research on the very companies that they raise capital for, and they make audacious price targets, which masquerades as research. What really is promotion. And what they never say in these research reports at the beginning is, big asterisk, notice to reader, our bank owns this position in this company at this price. We own, for example, we're calling Curaleaf at $22. It's at $9 today, whatever. Cool. Back it up with research. Show me your discount. Great, I can't wait. But tell me at the beginning how many millions of shares you have at $3. Just tell me that at the beginning. Okay, what's my point about Constellation? Ever see that movie like House Party or Superbad? It's the wild high school party that gets out of control and everyone's having fun until someone calls the police or the parents show up or the neighbors show up. That was Constellation, okay? So we in Canada were having an unsupervised, unchaperoned wild house party. It was a kegger. I was part of it. Let me tell you, we were banging it hard. And everyone was cheering us on. Woo! Like literally, woo! The bankers were telling us we were geniuses. Bruce was the Thomas Edison meets Steve Jobs, right? I saw him a week before he got deposed at World Cannabis Congress on stage with Martha Stewart. He was being feted by Martha as like the second coming of. So, but the thing is, Constellation, they didn't have any bias. They were in it because they were in it. So when they, quite frankly and unceremoniously beheaded the king, and called him out on an earnings call, and then posted last week an $872 million quarterly write-down. To me, that was the first meaningful analysis, independent, objective analysis we had as to the valuation of one of the Canadian unicorns. That's what I say, that who else has actually made that call that's qualified, that isn't under a conflict of interest? So I know Bruce well. I've known him since 2012. I think highly of him. Bruce did what we told him to do, if you will, we being the collective echo culture that led to this thing that happened in Canada that shocked and astounded all of Canada. And at PharmaCan became Cronus, me too. And in my own investment portfolio, again, me too. Terry Booth at Aurora, him too. The guys at Afria, them too, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a game of musical chairs, okay? And the music is the money. Until the money stops, you don't know how many chairs, how many people there are. So my trend, the one that I didn't say, the Grim Reaper, is catastrophic failure, is a trend that we have to deal with now because we have found some cracks in the foundation that you can buy everything at any cost, issue unlimited amount of shares to buy that at any cost, expect to integrate 17 companies on 4 continents in 1 year. Never been done in any big business, and your stock price will go up forever and ever as you start posting massive losses. Eventually, the laws of gravity assert themselves, and in business, the fundamental law is if you lose money forever and you have no goodwill, you're going to be worthless. I'm not saying it's Canopy's fate, but I'm saying that was an important moment that you've highlighted. Sorry, the lady in front. I don't like to speak about the fates of individual companies, frankly, unless they're my own, in which case I speak proudly of them. Of course, I know them. Again, I don't like to speak about the fates of individual companies. No, that's a PharmaCan with 2 N's. That's the company that signed a deal with MedMen about 17 years ago, which was unwound last week. Yeah, that was the longest amount of time between deal signed and deal not consummated. That's like, if they were a couple, I would say, do you guys really want to get married? It looks like you're having some issues here. Like, get it done or not. Next. I think in the back he was first. I apologize. Yeah, like the way Alicia said she can't speak for movies, I can't speak for the collective industry, but the answer is yes, that actually is where it has to happen. That's exactly where it has to happen. And if it doesn't happen there, it doesn't matter where else it happens. I mean, I don't really say it's per se the investor. I say it's the companies that have inbound all this investment capital that are actually operating. Let the investor just, like the investor, it doesn't quite have the mantle that the operating company that took that investment capital has to push an agenda because they're not a stakeholder in the same way. They don't have quite the same platform. But as shareholders, they have a platform and they can agitate management to do not the right thing, the profitable thing. This is the thing about diversity, social equity. I always say it's not like the right thing to do, it's the profitable thing to do. It pays off on your share price, your revenue, your earnings. Yes. Oh, I mean, it's not going to be the force multiplier we ought to expected it to have been. And, Canada, let's take all the fun out of cannabis, basically. Like this nanny paternalistic, like the fact that we're actually legitimately in October 2019 anticipating in Canada, the first real country to go legal, the introduction of topicals, edibles, and concentrates is just the most asinine public policy botch I can imagine. I mean, no disrespect to our fine government. I mean, they've really not covered themselves in glory. And my point is that if you let the market behave like the market, then absolutely this would be a massive force multiplier to improve the fortunes. But the problem, let's just say, the ultimate of all the things we want to accomplish in the cannabis industry, one of the things we need to accomplish is to integrate the so-called black market with the so-called white market and meet in the middle, as Malik said earlier. And that's important for like a lot of reasons, but it will that's how a lot of these kind of issues are ultimately going to get resolved. As long as the black market can sell products that we can't sell in Canada, we can't compete with them. As long as they can market their products and we can't market our products, we can't compete. If you really want to, if you will not defeat the black market, because that's the wrong mentality, but bring it in and integrate it, make one market. You got to make it one market, and you got to let the market assert itself. So the way to integrate, you can't beat the unregulated market with a stick. You got to use a carrot, and to do that, you have to let us, the regulated market, use best practices in technology, innovation, and marketing to bring people from the unregulated market, not the black market, the unregulated market. That's the key distinction. I'm all for regulation. I wouldn't put suntan lotion on my body or eat a sushi roll or anything if I didn't know there was some oversight, because I don't trust human beings not to cheat when allowed, when no one's looking. They tend to cheat when no one's looking. But we need to allow the white market to integrate with the black market and to fully act like the product it is, which is full in almost uninhibited marketing and technological innovation. Yes, ma'am. Hi, Christine. I prefer unregulated. I think that's the right phrase. Well, it's hard for all us because I have no doubt it's the hardest job there is as entrepreneurs is raising capital. Well, I think you are in the system, and I congratulate you for that. And it's important that we recognize and honor that. And I have no doubt that you face above average challenges when you go to market for capital than than I might face. That being said, I'm struggling to raise capital for my company right now. I really am, despite my magnanimous personality and white skin tone and penis. I'm still struggling to raise capital. I really, really am. It's really, really, really hard. And we're in a sideways market now, and people are a little afraid. So whatever the challenges you face, they're being compounded now by macroeconomic forces. Yeah. No, go. Well, someone's going to give you money pretty soon because of but listen, the market's changing right now. The thing is, that's my point, is that when I said the laws of gravity are going to assert themselves, what I'm hearing, I'm on stage and attend these events. I was at ArcView in New York, so something is changing like literally right now, and what is changing is that we're going to start, if you will, paying more attention to your kind of businesses, disciplined, financially responsible, and profitable than these crazy house party businesses where you lose money for, yes, the answer is yes. I'm old-fashioned. My first company, I've never had investors. I run small businesses that I worry about at night. Until I got to cannabis, I'm just like a small business person that worried about making payroll for many, many years, that struggled, that never had investors, had to like beg, borrow, steal to keep it going. And so a lot of this was new to me. I didn't even get into this world. And so I was like, holy shit, I don't know nothing about this. And it's tricky, and there's a lot of snaky, slimy people out there. It's really bad, much worse than even worse than those movies that scared me. So I feel it. It's hard, but I'm telling you, you have it in you to go get that money. You're going to get that money, and the key for us entrepreneurs, the key is to have almost like an evangelical sense of purpose, and no matter how many times you don't get it, you go back and you'll get it. You will. And it'll be harder for you, I don't doubt it, but that's no excuse not to go get it. So go get it. No, you got it right. They're fucking up. They're missing the good businesses.
Ma'am, as a lawyer, I'll tell you, congratulations that you're in the black, and it sounds like in a short amount of time you're profitable or break even. I think that's remarkable, and I see a lot of companies. You should be proud of yourself.
Okay. I'm sorry? Well, sorry, we're good. Can I just... Okay, again, I'm not the most qualified person to answer that question, but I try to read like credible advanced research, and there has been positive research coming out of a number of accredited universities, medical schools, or just pharmaceutical studies that are showing that it can delay the not the onset. You can't reverse dementia. My father passed away from Alzheimer's. It is irreversible right now. But there's promising research that cannabis could be, if you will, a neuroprotectant to lower the incidence of Alzheimer's. All of this is not yet like ready to be FDA-approved product. But there's also very promising research that I've read that for patients that start a cannabis rep therapy after having been diagnosed with a form of dementia, Alzheimer's or other types of dementia, that it slows the advancement, which if anyone's ever had a loved one to dementia, if you could slow the advancement, it could be measured in years of having your loved one, more or less, slightly. affected, but more or less that loved one versus not. And I saw my father pass quickly from my father to not my father, if you will, anymore. And the thought that he could have even had an extra year of kind of like happy lucidity, it would have been breathtaking. Looking back, we had nothing to lose. We should have tried it. Like, why not? But he was going to die of his disease. Alzheimer's has like a mortality rate of almost 3 years from diagnosis. So what did we have to lose? We should have done it. And the worst case scenarios, it would have been benign. It certainly might have been positive. So there is some indications, not yet ready to be fully verified as efficacious by like a Food and Drug Administration, on a whole range of illnesses and diseases. Parkinson's, we're involved in a novel remedy that has shown tremendous efficacy in resolving the tremors from Parkinson's. Everyone knows the Charlotte's Web story, so that's the importance of research, is whether the plant might actually unlock novel therapies that the world has, for inexplicable or corrupt reasons, turned its back on for the last 100 years.
Big hand for Paul Rosen, please. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, New West.